Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about the movie Pacific Rim. And first of all, I gotta get this out of front. I really did enjoy this movie. This is really just sort of, basically if you're a fan of mech anime like I am, this is the live action movie you've probably waited your entire time as a mech fan to see. This is just, it really is just awesome. Now, I'm not really an aficionado of giant monsters, kaiju movies, but a good friend of mine in college was, and so I learned a decent bit about those movies from him, and this is really just an absolutely amazing fusion of those two things together. Now, one thing I want to talk about in this review is that the main complaint I've seen about on the internet about this movie, and it's people, anime fans in general, just sort of complaining about this being a rip-off and like stealing from anime and blah 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 blah, cultural appropriation, and just going on and on about how it steals everything from Evangelion. Okay, well, first of all, those people are full of it, as far as I'm concerned. Let me explain why I feel this way. Now, first of all, let me get it out of the way that Evangelion is my absolute favorite anime of all time. I saw that when I was like 19 years old, 19, 20 years old. I got the whole series as a birthday present. I sat down and marathoned it over 2 days, and afterwards I was literally physically and emotionally exhausted. And Evangelion is a series I have bought like 3 times on DVD, normal DVD, HD, on Blu-ray, and all this other stuff. So believe you me, I love me some Evangelion. I even used to have an action figure of Unit 3 sitting. I'm sorry, Unit 1, my favorite Unit 1, Shinji's mech, on my dresser. So yeah, I love Evangelion. And the thing is, though, I think the charge of calling this a knockoff or a ripoff in any way of Evangelion or mechs in general, and of course the giant monster movies, is complete BS. And the reason I feel that way is, and I'm going to be sort of lifting a little bit of phrasing from Chuck over at SF Debris, who did a really nice video on the difference between something that is inspired by another work and something that is just a ripoff of another work. And he basically boils it down to being like this. A knockoff is something that just takes from the original and contributes nothing to the genre or just in general. It's just a big rehash. A work that is inspired by something else does take elements from other sources, but reinterprets them in such a way that it adds something to the genre, or however you put it. And there's no denying that Evangelion, the thumbprints, the handprints of Evangelion are all over this movie. I mean, literally, you can totally see moments that were just obviously inspired by Evangelion. And we'll talk about the characters a little bit more, but Mako is, if you look at her and think about what's going on with her, she's actually a very noticeable fusion of both Rei and Asuka. But we'll get into that in a little bit more. But the thing is, I really think that Pacific Rim, while obviously taking inspiration and elements and influence from things like Evangelion and Godzilla and all that other stuff, it has something unique to say on its own. It's set in an imaginative world. The characters are, obviously drawn from that particular genre of entertainment, but they all have their own backstories, they all have their own characterization, and, well, it's like I said, this takes elements from mech anime, from giant monster movies, throws them in a blender, and puts out something that, while obviously inspired by those, has something unique to say in its own right. And let me read you a quote I found by Hideo Kojima, and he's probably best known as one of the main guys behind the Metal Gear video games. And he says on Twitter, I had never imagined that I would be fortunate enough to see a film like this in my life. The emotional rush I had inside me was the same kind I had when I felt when I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, and and he talks about Jurassic Park. Just kind of skip ahead a little bit. Director Guillermo del Toro offers a spectacular vision of massive kaijus and robots in Pacific Rim. This film is not simply a film to be respected, but more importantly, it lets us dream of the future of entertainment movies. Pacific Rim is the ultimate otaku film that all of us had always been waiting for. Who are you if you are not Japanese and won't watch this? I hope you would accept this inspirational love letter that has traveled across the Pacific, written by director Guillermo del Toro. Now see, Hideo Kojima gets what I'm saying. This isn't a knockoff. This is a love letter. Guillermo del Toro, if you realize, he loves this kind of stuff. He's a guy who's like us. And keep in mind, this is the first movie he's really 100% been behind like this since he directed Hellboy 2. So seeing people go that he's just ripping this off, saying that this is a ripoff, it's just so, frankly, just strikes me as being a snobby elitist anime geek, which, if you really stop and think about it, is pretty darn ridiculous. I mean, really, you're gonna walk around with your nose stuck up in the air about cartoons about giant robots beating the hell out of monsters? I mean, let's face it, you can talk about characterization and symbolism and all that other stuff, but at the end of the day, that's still what we're talking about here, is giant robots beating the hell out of monsters. So, a little perspective here, everybody. Anyway, with that said, let me kind of get back into talking about the movie's elements a little bit more. First of all, I mean, it doesn't really need to be said, but I'm going to say anyway that the special effects in this movie are quite spectacular. Music is very solid. The only really complaint I can have about the movie visually is that sometimes I just felt so overwhelmed. There was just so much happening in a scene. I just wait a minute, I just cannot take all of this in. And I will say that there were some times when I felt the movie could have been a little bit better paced, but this is really just kind of minor complaints. No movie is perfect, and I certainly never expect perfection going into a movie. Now, another thing that I really do have to say is I really love some of the casting that they have on this movie. This is a very well done film. This is my first exposure to the lady Rinko Kikuchi. But yeah, this lady's really cool. I like her a lot. I hope to see more of her. And I actually am somewhat amused by her surname there, because when I lived in Japan for about 2 years, I actually lived in an area that was called Kikuchi. But anyway, also, another person that really needs to be given a lot of respect for this movie is Idris Elba. Now, folks who are into British TV shows would recognize this guy as the main character from the series Luther. Folks would also probably know him from The Wire. I've actually never seen The Wire. It's kind of on my list of shows that I really do need to sit down and watch someday. But yeah, his performance, wow, man. I thought Stacker Pentecost was actually probably my favorite character in the movie. It's just holy crap, man. This is a guy who really shows you how a good leader should act. I mean, this is a guy who really, in my mind, can stand along the sides of guys like Optimus Prime or Captain America or Duke from the old G.I. Joe cartoon. And I don't mean the movies, I mean 1980s cartoon Duke. It's yeah, okay, this guy wants me to go to hell. Okay, I will follow right behind him. And well, that seems like a pretty good way to transition into talking about the characters. And might as well, since I brought him up, start with talking about Stacker. Now, one thing before I actually get into that, one thing I do like is that every character in this movie is interesting. From the communications guy, Tony Choi, I believe his character's name is, to the two scientist dudes, to Hannibal Chow. And of course we have Mako and Raleigh, Herc and Chuck. everybody has their own little mini character arc. Something interesting is going on with them. Everybody has moments to show another side to their personality. And I gotta say, if you're gonna handle a movie like this and you still want to have good characterization, the way Guillermo del Toro handles that is really, really well done. So anyway, what I like about Stacker is, of course, that obviously he's a badass leader. He's badass. He's a good leader, but I really like how he does say that has that softer side to him when it comes to Mako. And really, a lot of this movie is all about these other sides to the characters, like the character of Chuck, the young Australian guy. Well, for the most of the movie, he's a dick, but across the course of the movie, you see him, playing around with his dog. He and his dad have that really very sad conversation at the end of the movie, and I love how they did not say that they loved each other. It was completely unspoken. But in a lesser movie, they would have actually used those words, and I'm so glad they didn't, because those words did not need to be said. It's all in the acting, it's all in the delivery, it's all in the emotion of the scene. And speaking of having a little trouble focus there, like the scientist guy, the nerdy dude, and you have to understand, I'm terrible with names, so forgive me that. He starts off as this really mousy fella, and he goes in there, and he, by the end of it, is marching into a den of gangsters and yelling at the gang boss. I mean, wow, what a great little moment there. And then there was Herman, played by Byrne something or other, the dude who was Owen on Torchwood. The moment where he kind of is at cross swords with this guy, they don't really get along, and then you sort of see him have his moment where he realizes, like, okay, we're going to do this together. As much as he probably bickered with the guy, his colleague, he had earned his respect. And then, of course, we come to characters like Mako. Now, she, of course, has these two sides to her. Earlier I mentioned that she's sort of this combination of Rei and Asuka. Well, obviously, I think it's a little bit more Rei for the most part of the movie, that she's sort of quiet and reserved. She obviously has the blue hair thing going on a little bit. She has a commanding officer who is essentially a father figure to her. But like Asuka, she also has this anger within her. She has this determination, and she hides so much of this behind that hyper-competence that she has. So, again, really nicely well done there. I said I would talk about Stacker. Well, again, he is in a lot of ways he's also like her. He just sort of hides that softer side to himself behind this mask of, well, it's not really a mask, that really is who he is, behind this whole thing of duty and being a soldier, of being the leader, of being that person that you would find, and above all else, not showing any weakness. But he's also got that problem that, hey, he's secretly dying. Hey, he's struggling to even admit to himself that he is holding Mako back, not because she's unqualified, but because he simply doesn't want to see her hurt. And of course we have Raleigh. I really did like that. I really did basically like that he wasn't Chuck. Chuck is the guy in movies like this who basically thinks he's Maverick from Top Gun, who thinks he's Tom Cruise. And while Top Gun is certainly an enjoyable movie, when I watched it, I actually found myself rooting for Iceman. But I will leave it at that because I don't want to confuse people who haven't seen Top Gun too much. Although, if you will forgive me, if you haven't seen Top Gun, go see Top Gun. It's really a good movie. Anyway, what I like about Raleigh is that, well, he's obviously been through the emotional ringer. All that arrogance was stripped of him when his brother died. And look at the low point where we see him when the movie picks up. He really is, well, I guess I could say he's what I think a mech pilot in a situation like this should be. he is not a cocky guy. He lost that. He is somebody who is caring, who wants to do what is right, who is trying to be a decent guy, who's trying his hardest to really just do the best he can under an extraordinarily difficult circumstances. And I like how it's really things like his compassion, like the kindness that he shows towards Mako, that really helps him win the day in the end. And of course, he even makes peace with Chuck. He forms that bond with his commander. He kind of helps Stacker Pentecost realize that as much as I love Mako, if I truly love her, I need to let her do this. So let me see here. Oh yeah, and one other thing that I gotta say that I liked about the Australian guys is I loved how they had that little the logo of their dog on the side of their mech. That was really cool. That was a very nice touch. And of course, I also think it should be said that I really liked how this isn't like Independence Day. I like how this is a people from all over the world come together to save the world kind of movie. Like the best monster fighters in the world in this movie are some Australian guys. Like some Chinese dudes and some Russian people are pretty uber badass, and while they do go down, they go down. Well, they all get their shot to show that they're serious badasses. The Chinese, not quite so much, but you got to give the Russians credit. They went down, but they went down hard. And I'll also give them credit. How cool was that mech? I mean, it was basically a mech with a nuclear cooling tower for a head. I mean, how awesome is that? I mean, this is like something out of freaking G Gundam, which is like the stupidest Gundam show they ever made. But it's still kind of awesome. And that's one thing I love about this movie. They were able to take something that was almost too stupid for G Gundam and make it cool. So let me see here. Is that everything I had to say? Yeah, I think that really covers it. So let me kind of wrap all of this up. At the end of the day, what we have here is what Hideo Kojima said. This is a love letter. This is a love letter to monster movies and mech anime. And oh wait, Ron Perlman is in this movie. Ron Perlman is insanely awesome. I mean, you yourself become 10% more awesome if you are within 100 feet of Ron Perlman. He is that awesome. I love Ron Perlman. Anyway, going back to what I said. So, to sit around and complain that this is a ripoff, if you're doing that, I'm sorry, you have completely and utterly missed the point of this movie. It's like, as I said, like Kojima's right, we are insanely lucky to be living in a time where movies like this are getting made. And it is my fervent hope, as somebody who loves, geeky movies like this and mech anime and just stuff along these lines, I really hope this is the start of something. I'm hoping that this is like what the 1989 Batman movie was for superhero movies. The spark that started a new level of respect for the genre. Now, let's not kid ourselves. There were certainly some bombs that came out after Batman, and it did take quite a while for us to get to a place where superhero movies would come out regularly enough and be of reasonably good quality that you can have a little confidence that Hollywood seems to have figured out how to make a decent superhero movie. Obviously, some more turkeys are probably going to come down the pipe at one point, but like I said, I think that Hollywood's figured out how to make these kind of movies and how to do them well, or at least okay. So as I said, I really hope this is the start of us getting to see these sort of movies. I mean, how awesome would it be to, say, see a live-action version of something like Gundam or Full Metal Panic? Well, anyway, I think my point is made. So, whatever the future might hold for this particular genre of movies in the West, I think we should take what Kojima said as truth, that we are extremely fortunate that this movie got made and that it's out there for us as geeky folks to enjoy. So, folks, with that said, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.